Hey everyone, it's Duke Doc. I'm going to do a quick thing on power generation. I hope it'll be quick. I do tend to run on, but I hope you'll forgive me. Why do we talk so much about power generation in the SCA? Well, because we have a convention that is above the touch and somewhat beneath simply knocking someone unconscious. So we're looking for a force range that we can call good. So force generation is important, it's vital to what we're doing, but the primary purpose for me is not to be able to hit as hard as you can. Nobody needs to hit as hard as they can. Well, I don't know. If you're 110 pounds, you might need to hit as hard as you can to be in the middle of our range. But for the most part, we aren't trying to hit as hard as we can. We are just trying to hit with sufficient force. There is too hard, and there is not hard enough. So what we're doing is finding that middle range. But once we have achieved that middle range, the purpose for getting there is to regain some precision. Okay? And I'll try and demonstrate what I'm talking about. Starting with how we generate power. And I'm going to do this all from an orthodox stance, but the principles are kind of the same. Right? If you're starting from here, you've already got some of this body torque in play. So from the orthodox stance, right foot back, sword up, shield up. I'm not going to put my shield in my hand right now because I want you to be able to see my body. Okay? Weight evenly distributed, maybe a little bit heavier on the back foot. And my ground isn't perfectly even here either, so I hope that doesn't mess with what I'm trying to show you. But so, throw a blow, basic blow. The very first blow we all learn, what we often refer to as the flat snap. Push with the hip, push with the ball of your foot, right? And it'll dig in, and that heel might probably lift up a little bit. The calf muscle is engaged, okay? That's why you want your foot a little bit turned towards your opponent and not too far away. Because once you get past about 45 degrees, your calf muscle is no longer engaged, and all you've got is your quadriceps working for you to push you forward, okay? So, might be a little wide. Okay, so push with the back foot, right? You dig in, drive with the back foot, driving with that back leg. This pushes the hip forward and shifts your weight over your front foot. Now we're not going to, this is the basics, so we're not going to talk about moving and changing range and gaining range as you throw, okay? The basics of how you're generating this power has to come first. So that basic mechanic is drive the hip forward. Notice that the shoulders do not follow immediately, okay? Eventually, the difference will be almost indistinguishable, but I want you to see that to start with, all right? The hip moves forward, the shoulders follow and go a little past even as the sword comes out. Notice also that my center line here, that I have crossed that center line. My hand starts on one side of it and ends up on the other side. This is important, okay, because it allows the hand to move the right distance and allows the weapon to drop into the slot and hit in the right spot, okay? So, again, hips, shoulder, hand. Okay, that's the basic body movement. Now, another finer point, when I'm teaching somebody their first couple of shots, how you hold the sword makes a difference too. That's why I think you'll find more experienced fighters will take a great care with their grip, because your grip is the interface you have with your weapon. How it feels in your hand, I want that to be the same every time. I want it to feel a certain way. Now, when you're throwing your blow, I want you to think in terms of literally throwing the weapon at your opponent, right? You're putting all of this force into it, and you're driving it forward almost like a shot put towards your opponent. By that time, the weapon should have all the force it needs to travel that distance and hit your opponent, and for them to call it good. Okay? So, to start that movement, to impart that momentum, you need to have a good interface with the weapon. These two fingers and your thumb are the strongest part of your hand. They're also the most dexterous, the most agile, okay? So if you've got your whole hand locked onto the sword like it's a carefully locked thing, I don't know, you lose precision. It's just a club. It becomes a club. You don't have as much control over it as you want. When you can throw the blow, now you'll need these three digits to impart that momentum, like throwing a spear or a javelin. You're throwing it. You're throwing it horizontally almost. And you notice that the blade wants to come around. Okay? So as you throw it, as it reaches about this distance, just before your elbow comes straight, you want to start transferring the grip from these two fingers to these two fingers. So it's a roll. And now I can almost let go of the sword with these two fingers. But what that gives me back now is I've used the strength of those fingers to impart the momentum in the weapon. It's moving forward, it's at speed, it's going to have enough power by the time it gets there. Once it's past here, it's got the power or it doesn't, with some exceptions, okay? So what I think of in terms of transferring that is the sword's moving forward, and I am arresting it. I'm stopping its forward momentum. The sword would continue. If I let go of it, the sword would just go forward. I want to stop it back here with these two fingers. So as the sword moves forward, it stops and the blade turns. The blade, show it like this. The sword's moving forward. I want to stop it with these two fingers so that the blade continues this way. Turns, cuts, all right? So start, roll, and notice that the sword starts in this position, ends in this position, right? Along, diagonal across the palm instead of perpendicular to the palm, okay? Now at this point, I'm still mostly holding it with these two fingers. And this is true for pretty much every blow, including the wrap, which I'll get to probably in another video. So all of these things have to happen in sort of a sequence, right? Hips, drive with the foot, hips, shoulders, hand goes out. Hand goes out wherever the target is going to be. It doesn't really matter. And then that roll of the fingers to release the energy into the weapon and the weapon into your opponent. Another thing that we talk about in the SCA that I consider extremely important is blade orientation. It's in our rules. Pay attention to it. Keeping your hand and your knuckles oriented correctly. Keeping your blade in line. This one's pretty clearly marked. Check me. Make sure I'm hitting this thing. This bowling ball pel that I've got here isn't really about for practicing power generation. It's practicing precision. Precision in our game is really more important than power. Doesn't matter how hard I throw. If you block it, it doesn't count. I can't knock you down. I can't knock your defense down so that I can hit you hard enough. It's probably not going to work that way. So, basic, watch the hips. All right, notice this ridge is right in line with the blade, and it is 90 degrees to my target. So that's basic power generation. So I'm going to leave that here and move on to something else next time, probably range, and probably just range and a little bit of movement. Check it out. Thanks. I'm Duke Dog.